Good.
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you? Well, I set up some chairs.
Okay.
You can sit over here, or we can sit at the table.
Table works for me if that's okay.
Yeah.
Looks like the pool is popular.
Yeah, especially during the summer.
Yeah, that's nice for the kids. This is pretty cool.
It's a nice place to meet.
It is a great place to meet, yeah. Hey, so I think you remember what we're doing with competency restoration. The court in this case has ruled, we're the only ones here, right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
There's one person in the office.
Is the door closed?
No, but the office is right by the front door.
Oh, so it's... Do you want to, are you okay to talk about this right
Yeah,
here? With
yeah.
that person there? Okay. So the court in your case ruled that you were not competent to proceed, only meaning that the judge didn't believe you had a good enough understanding of the legal system for court to be fair for you. I'm not so sure if that's accurate or not, because I think you have a pretty good understanding of the legal system.
Yeah.
And Dr. Harper, who met with you, kind of felt that his main concern was in the area of a reasoned choice of legal strategies. And just meaning that he wasn't sure that you could reasonably consider all the evidence and then make a decision that would give you the best possible outcome for yourself. And so that was his main area of focus, and yet we still need to go over kind of all the other information when we first meet today, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you happen to recall, do you have any questions? Okay. Do you happen to recall in this case what the charges are?
Yeah. This is for the first set of charges. It has to do with stalking a girl, trespassing, walking away from an officer, and I think there's one more. Not giving my name.
Yeah. They call that failure to disclose identity. This case doesn't involve, there's only one case and there's no trespassing charge in this case. There's just the 3 charges.
Okay.
So the failure to stop, the failure to disclose your identity, and the stalking. Do you happen to know how those 3 charges are classified?
Stalking is misdemeanor A. I think walking away from the officers is a B. I don't remember the other one.
Okay, close.
Close the name.
You're correct. The stop, they call it failure to disclose identity, but it is also okay to say, I didn't tell them my name. At least that's what they allege. So the identity one is a B, the failure to stop is an A, and the stalking is an A. Okay? And that's just information that, as we talk about it, it'll stick in your mind, okay? Do you happen to have your charges written down anywhere?
Yes.
Okay. With the classification, does it say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Do you happen to recall what they allege happened that resulted in these charges?
No.
Do you remember when it was?
February 8th.
Okay. All right. And are you okay if I read it to you?
Sure.
Okay. They allege that between the 1st and the 8th, that contact was initiated repeatedly and it was unwanted with a 19-year-old individual. And I guess that they allege that you'd met this individual at her place of employment. It says that you allegedly sent her multiple text messages with inappropriate content, even after being informed of her age and being blocked. Despite being told by her and others to cease contact, the defendant allegedly continued showing up daily at her workplace, and on one occasion refused to leave when asked. When police intervened, the defendant allegedly refused to identify himself, disregarded commands to leave her alone, and attempted to approach her, leading to his arrest. So that's the allegations.
Okay. It's all false.
Okay. And that's what I was going to say. It doesn't mean that they're true, but that's what they allege happened, and that's what they based the charges upon. So again, you might remember The reason it's important to know what they say is that's what you're defending yourself against. You're fighting against what they say happened, okay? So as part of competency, those are the first 2 of the 7 elements of competency. The third element is knowing what the potential penalties are associated with the charges. So a Class A and a Class B misdemeanor, if somebody were to be convicted of those, what might happen to them?
You can get fined, you can go to jail. For my case, you go to jail, not prison. Um, you can do public service. I think there's another one, but I don't remember what it is. Another punishment potential.
Treatment or classes is the fourth one. With the jail time, how much jail time is associated with a Class A misdemeanor?
I believe a year.
It's up to a year. And how about a Class B?
Half a year.
Exactly. Can you tell me, do you recall, how does probation work?
I've never been on probation, but you don't commit any more crimes, and you have an officer you report to, and you're not in jail.
Yep, that's the good part. There's a whole bunch of rules you have to follow, such as not committing any additional crimes, meeting with a person when they schedule the officer. There's things you have to do and there's things you can't do, such as can't get any more charges, have to meet regularly. Usually you have to keep that person updated as far as your contact information. Whatever the rules are, and usually there's long lists, you'll be told verbally in court, and people also get a written description of what they need to do. If a person doesn't follow all the rules, it's called violating probation, and that person can be booked into jail. So it's just kind of what you need to know about probation, okay? So the next element is understanding the adversarial nature of the court process. So what is the role of your defense attorney?
He's supposed to defend me, help me get select the best option for my case.
Yep.
Mine just fights against me again. He's forced onto me. The court just says, no, you're incompetent, and don't even give me a chance to defend myself. I even said I won a court case, and they don't care. They still say, you're incompetent. So it's just kind of built up against me.
And that makes it hard. Generally what the thought is with those attorneys is they've been to law school, and that takes a couple years, and they've studied the law, they've passed tests, and so they know how the law works. But I think perhaps despite recent experience, that when it comes time to make decisions for you, those decisions are yours. It is interesting, and you're kind of hit the nail on the head. Competency usually isn't questioned until a person disagrees with their attorney. And then the attorney might question their competency.
He was forced onto me, and I'm not allowed to disagree with him? That's just messed up.
Well, at this point, and I can't speak what happened before, but once a person is ruled not competent, then the judge believes that that person is not thinking clearly and is not able to make the best decisions for themselves. And so after a person is ruled not competent, usually nothing in their case can change until that person is ruled competent to proceed. And then at that time, if a person wants to fire their attorney, they can. Whether or not attorney is fired is under the judge's approval. Usually a judge doesn't think that most of us have the knowledge, the legal knowledge, to defend ourselves adequately in court. So you are correct. Your defense attorney is supposed to be helping you. And that's what a person needs to know for competency. What does the prosecutor do?
He tries to get the maximum penalty for the charges that are charged to.
Is that because they don't like you, or because it's their job?
Well, if you see this from my point of view, they don't like me because the court doesn't like me, the cops don't like me, but it's supposed to be in a fair court case that there it's um, by not bipartisan. What's the word? They're supposed to use fair judgment. They're not supposed to take sides.
Supposed to be neutral.
Yeah, neutral.
Well, the judge is neutral, but the prosecutor, are they for you, against you, or neutral?
Well, they're fighting against me. They're not supposed to do it personally.
True. It shouldn't be a personal matter. It should be a professional matter.
Yes.
And it's not because they don't like you. It's because they're doing their job. And what is the role of the judge?
I think the role you're taking is taking far too the court is perfect. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's very much decided against me. They don't let me stand up for myself. The judge doesn't let me stand up for myself. They don't see that I could be competent. They just silence me and throw away lock and key. They threw me into jail, but I bailed out after a month of sitting in a cell. The judge is supposed to remain neutral. The judge's job is to decide if the evidence is for you or against you. And I think he doesn't decide if you're guilty or not guilty. He decides your punishment.
He is responsible for sentencing. However, if there is a trial, as you probably know, if there's a trial by jury, then the jury decides guilty or not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, in lesser cases, a bench trial, where the judge is the one who decides if somebody's guilty or not guilty in the trial. But generally speaking, yes. He's not deciding guilt and not guilt is not something that just happens in the open courtroom. Who is the defendant in your case?
I am.
Okay. And if there does happen to be a trial and there's a jury, what is the job of the jury
The job of the jury.
at a trial?
They're supposed to make a neutral judgment to see if the defendant is guilty or not guilty.
When you say neutral, what do you mean?
Not pick sides, like not pick favorites.
Okay. When they decide if somebody's guilty or not guilty, what do they base that decision on?
Hopefully evidence, testimonies.
Okay, yeah. How could that be? What would make that not be neutral? What would they do that would be?
They have they might call me a rebel and dislike that. They might have something against the cops because I'm fighting against the cops, and they might dislike that. So it might not be neutral in one of those cases.
Okay, I understand. Okay. The next area of competency, and the area where Dr. Harper had some concerns, has to do with what's called, and you may remember this, a reasoned choice of legal strategies. So in the state of Utah, there's 5 pleas that can be used in court. Do you remember what those choices are?
Guilty, not guilty, no call, no sentence, no contest.
Yeah.
I think there's an insanity plea.
Yep.
And I don't remember the 5th one. I think it's
Okay. And I will get you that 5th one. And does the insanity plea apply to your case?
I don't know if competency affects its sanity.
It doesn't.
Okay then.
The reason the insanity plea, which is called not guilty by reason of insanity, doesn't apply to your case is it's reserved for first-degree felony cases. So the most serious cases in the state of Utah, that's the only ones that can use the insanity plea. So it doesn't apply to your case.
Okay.
The one that most people in the state of Utah have never heard of is called guilty. It used to be called guilty with mental illness. Now they call it guilty with a mental condition. And most people are not familiar with that one at all. It is a guilty plea, but when a person uses it, they're saying that a mental condition may have played a role in whatever the alleged events. Okay. So when somebody pleads guilty to a crime, what does that mean?
It means they say they committed the crime and they accept the consequences.
Yes. And if somebody pleads guilty, what does the judge next do?
He signs the sentence and
Yes, they are sentenced. When somebody pleads not guilty, what does that mean?
they're saying that they didn't commit the crimes alleged.
And then what happens next in court?
You have to fight against it.
And what's the forum in which that fight takes place?
Hopefully there is a trial in which you get to present evidence and testimony.
Okay.
And there's negations or
Negotiations.
people try to reason against the testimonies and evidences.
Okay. What does that plea of no contest mean?
That means you accept the charges, but you don't plead guilty. You don't say that you committed the actions, but you accept the charges.
And so what happens when somebody pleads no contest?
They get the punishment.
Yes, they will be sentenced and they agree to accept the sentence. You may recall that most cases in the state of Utah are resolved with a plea bargain or a plea deal. Do you remember how a plea bargain works?
You get less punishment if you accept guilty or no contest early.
What happens to the charges?
I think, well, you're accepting the punishment, so it's like you did the thing. You just say that you didn't, even though they say.
But when you say less punishment, though, what could you give me an example?
So let's say you stole $500 from a grocery store, and they caught you on camera, but they say if you just plead guilty, let's say they couldn't see your face clearly or something. If you just plead guilty or no contest, we'll give you a fine of, I'm not sure how much. Let's say it's a $1,500 fine for stealing. We'll give you a fine of just $500. But if you don't, we'll fight this in case in court, and you might have to accept a larger fine if you're found guilty.
Okay. So is what I hear you saying that the sentence would be decreased, it'd be less?
Mm-hmm.
So if a sentence is lessened, what has to happen to the charge?
It has to be accepted
Okay.
by the defendant.
Right. So for example, though,
What happens to the charge by whom? By the judge? By
as part of the plea deal. So for example,
the defendant then?
yeah, if we just look at Class A misdemeanor where there's 0 to 12 months, in order for a punishment to be lessened, the charge has to be decreased also. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So in a plea deal, the way that a punishment is going to be decreased is that they reduce the charge. And there's two things that can happen with a plea deal. A charge can be lessened. For example, a Class B could be reduced to a Class C. The other thing is when there's more than one charge, such as 3, 1 or 2 of those charges could be dismissed. They could be dropped. And that's kind of the benefit of a plea bargain, having something dismissed or decreased, lessened. So for some people, most people consider that to be a good deal, facing less than they were originally charged with. So, question for you. What do you think is going to happen in this case? How do you think this is going to turn out?
What is the reasons why you arrested? What are those called? Are those charges or not?
These are called the allegations against you.
Allegations.
The reasons, yeah.
I was mixing those up with charges.
What they allege happened. And then there's the charges. So this is understanding what the charges mean.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the story that the police or the prosecutor is saying. This is what charges. And the understanding the charges in another case, like understanding what trespassing means if you were charged with trespassing. Understanding failure to disclose identity, what does that mean? So understanding the charges, and part of understanding the charges is also understanding the classifications. Class A misdemeanor, Class B misdemeanor, okay? All right, so as far as this is the plea options, and in statute it's called having a reasoned choice of legal options. So here, how do you think this case is going to turn out? What do you think is going to happen?
I'm going to plead not guilty.
Okay. And so does that mean you're going to take the case to trial?
Yes.
Okay. And at a trial, who goes first, the prosecution or the defense?
Probably the prosecution, because they're bringing up the case.
Exactly. Yeah, that kind of makes sense how that works, huh? So what evidence do you think the prosecution might use to try to prove their case?
Testimonies of witnesses.
Okay. For example, who might that be?
Company employees.
Okay, people that were at the job site, co-workers. Okay. Who else do you think?
Police testimonies.
Law enforcement. Okay. Who else?
Camera evidence.
Was there camera?
They had body cams. They said they were on.
Okay. Body cams. All right. What else?
Not sure. That seems about it.
Well, do you think this alleged victim would testify?
I don't know. Her testimony isn't very strong. It seems like she made some mistakes or messed something up.
Okay. Well, she's the alleged victim.
But she could.
Do you think it's kind of pretty likely?
Okay.
Usually the alleged victim in any case, if they're the one that feels that their rights were violated, usually they testify. It's a part of this. So the prosecution would present that evidence. What evidence is the defense going to present to prove innocence?
My testimony.
Okay.
I took some videos of when I was at the police. They saw me recording myself and recording them.
At the place where they allege you weren't supposed to be?
Nearby.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what other evidence will the defense use?
I actually work at the same parking lot, so that's why I was nearby.
Okay.
We share the same parking lot.
So you've kind of mentioned a lot of people, though, that sounds like from co-workers, body cam police, bystanders, that the prosecution's, it sounds like they've kind of got a lot of evidence, and it sounds like on the defense side, there's kind of just one person saying it didn't happen.
Yeah.
In situations like this, if there's a judge or jury evaluating the evidence, say kind of like there's 5 pieces of evidence over here and there's 1 piece of evidence over here, how does a judge or jury decide?
Well, if that one piece of evidence destroys all the other pieces of evidence, then there you go.
Well, let's look at one thing then. Let's look at the failure to disclose identity. There's going to be, because there's 3 separate charges and they're all considered separately. So it sounds like an officer or 2 that are saying you didn't say who you were, and potentially, as you mentioned, some body cam footage. And so there's that saying they asked
They're
who you
idiots because I
They
did
might-
say my name.
Okay, well, so that would be on the camera.
Yeah,
Okay, but they're alleging that it's not.
that's good for them. They'll look stupid when they're trying to present evidence.
So if their evidence shows, and I don't know, but that's the allegations. So if their evidence, if they've got 2 officers that say it didn't happen, and somehow they have a video that shows it didn't happen, and you're saying it did,
Mm-hmm.
how is the judge going to decide?
Well, you better look at the whole story
Okay,
because they're probably just showing one part.
so this is just assessing a person's understanding, not saying guilt or innocence. Well, the judge is, but how does the judge decide? Because in order to be found competent, a person has to have a clear understanding that this always outweighs this. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong, but this outweighs this. This is only for competency. Right now, nothing is going to court. You're not pleading your case. You're just demonstrating to a doctor that I understand how this works. I know this information. I can use this information to help me. And so that's where, in order to be found competent, a person has to, I understand 3 is greater than 1. If it's 1 to 1, that's always a tie, and the person charged with a crime wins in that case, if it's 1 to 1. But when it becomes 2 to 1, or 3 to 1, or 4 or 5, this number often wins over this. It does depend on the specific evidence, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
If their body cam footage shows you saying who you were, that's a great thing. But if somehow their body cam shows asking somebody to identify themselves and they don't, that's an issue. Before you plead your case, you have the right with your attorney to view all the evidence against you so that you can make an informed choice of legal strategies, okay? You likely haven't seen that yet, and while the court says somebody's not competent, they won't. But after the judge rules that you are competent and your case moves forward, you will see everything that the prosecution has so that you can make the best choice for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know more than one is better, and judge prefers it depending on the value and if there's any discrepancies in it.
Yeah. Yeah. When we're in court, how do we need to act? In the courtroom, on video court.
You're supposed to be respectful,
Yep.
reverent.
Perfect. Any questions about anything we've talked about?
How are you supposed to defend yourself unless you start shouting because the judge just destroys your ability to defend yourself without any reasoning behind it, any clear reasoning. They just go all out against you, and it's like the jaws of hell are opened against you again, because this has happened before. And you said I was competent before, back in 2018, if you remember that.
Well, I know you went to the hospital, and I don't know what happened at the hospital. But
And you said that my defense attorney was conspiring with the prosecutor against me. You said that to me. And you're not supposed to do that.
So you went to the hospital, and you were there for a few months, and I don't know anything that happened at the hospital. I believe you were restored to competency,
years.
right?
I was there for years.
Were you?
Yeah.
That's unusual. Well, I don't know that Dr. Harper included in his report how long you were there, but I can go back and look. Because that would kind of be unusual.
At least to 2020. I know it was during COVID season when I got out.
Okay. I'll have to go take a peek. Because I certainly don't know. I don't find out or hear anything about anybody that's at the hospital. And he doesn't have any dates in here that speak to that. So,
Do I get a copy of his conclusions?
I am able to review all of this with you. I'm not allowed to give you a copy. This copy can be received only through your attorney. There's actually another option, I believe, that you can do a records request from the state hospital, because the state hospital owns this. Dr. Harper may or may not give you a copy. Usually they don't, but your attorney has a copy also. But I can go over everything with you that's included here. And again, as I said, so the 7 elements of competency, which begin with, does Mr. Hale have the ability to understand charges and allegations? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Does Mr. Hale have the ability to understand the range of possible penalties? Yes. Does Mr. Hale have the ability to understand the adversarial nature of the proceedings? Yes. I'm going to skip over this one, but does Mr. Hale have the ability to communicate facts, events, and states of mind? Yes. Does Mr. Hale have the ability to manifest behavior sufficient to allow the court to proceed? Yes. So, back to this one. Does Mr. Hale have the ability to engage in a reasoned choice of legal strategies and options? Dr. Harper opined no. And then we can go over why he thought that.
Yeah.
And then he also concluded, does Mr. Hale have the ability to testify relevantly if applicable? He also felt that that was a no. Do you want me to read this couple paragraphs to you?
Sure, yes.
Okay. So he says, Mr. Hale does not have the ability to engage in a reasoned choice of legal strategies and options. When he was asked about the role of his attorney, he stated, and it's interesting because he said you understood the role of the attorney over here, but he stated, they're supposed to defend me, but my previous attorney was working in angle with the prosecutor to conspire against me because of my righteousness and uprightness. Additionally, while he accurately relayed the role of the judge at a trial, he later stated, I think she's biased because she's following the threats of the cops. She works for them, which it's actually kind of the other way around. The judge isn't over the jail, and yet the judge tells the jail what to do, as far as the judge alone decides if somebody's in jail or out of jail. And so the judge is kind of at the top of the criminal justice system. He adds here, when he was asked about potential evidence the prosecution has, he stated, they have witness statements. When he was asked how he might challenge these allegations, he began to convey delusional beliefs about sharing a manifesto he wrote outlining how the police have been targeting him. He stated, quote, "Police have tried to erase my evidence in the past. They've gone on my phone and erased the video recordings of them." He also stated the cops are corrupt. Salt Lake County cops are the boss. These Utah cops are just working for them. Again, not accurate. Each county has their own sheriff's department, and they all work separately from each other, which it's amazing to see how differently they work. The Salt Lake County Jail is an awful place. The Utah County Jail, it's a jail, but it's so much better. When he was asked about the plea options, he correctly stated, "It's when you admit to certain charges in exchange for lesser penalties." That's a plea bargain, yep. When asked about whether it'd be wise to speak to the prosecutor alone, he stated, "No, because they could try to use what you say against you."
So he asks me, what do I have as evidence against their evidence? And I state, the police have destroyed my evidence in the past, and he should have inferred that I'm not going to tell you because you might record this, and then my evidence might get destroyed. He should have inferred that.
Oh, maybe he should have, but I don't even know if he would have imagined that.
Well, it's a conspiracy. You should have a little clearer imagination. Ever watched a TV show before?
You want me to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. He was able to correctly identify pleas of guilty and not guilty, but noted he would want to go to trial to prove that he has been, quote, "targeted by police because of my righteousness." Furthermore, in his manifesto he shared with the evaluator, he referenced numerous delusional beliefs, including that the police were implanting evidence against him and stalking him using surveillance, like they implanted this false righteousness, making their Halloween 16 implanted evidence even worse. He claimed that Salt Lake City police were part of a national conspiracy to control local judges and send him to a, quote, "crazy hospital," unquote, because he knew so much. He stated that the police hacked his journaling accounts to prevent international fame, blocked his internet access to stop him from contacting media, and monitored his credit card activity. Quote, "always kept an eye on me, specifically tracing my credit card purchases," unquote. He described a supposed covert airport trafficking operation involving red and white airplanes and alleged airport staff and police complicity, stating, quote, "the police are harder on me too," unquote. He also referenced the courts are corrupt. The judge must have been threatened. The Constitution is hanging on by a thread. His delusions have been pervasive and occupied the majority of the content in the evaluation. His statements reflect that he does not have the ability to engage in a reasoned choice of legal strategies and options. Lastly, after attempted redirection, Mr. Hale continued to convey his delusions and brought them into the content of the evaluation. Due to the nature of his delusional state, it is unlikely that he can effectively engage in a reasoned choice of legal strategies and options. That's that part.
Well, thank you for reading that.
You're welcome, and I'll read the other one. So, because of your experience, you're aware that in order to proceed with your case, there will be another evaluation in approximately 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that doctor has to recommend that you're competent to proceed, okay? This isn't about you being proven innocent. It's not about sharing your evidence that you have for your defense. This isn't about guilt or innocence. This is just about knowing this information and being able to use this information to get the best outcome in your case. Which means, as you know, that anybody has a right to plead not guilty, guilty, no contest, guilty, this is an old form, sorry, guilty and mentally ill, or if it's a first-degree felony, not guilty by reason of insanity. So it doesn't apply to your case. So these 4 pleas are all available to you, and you get to choose whatever you want to do. In order to plead not guilty, when that doctor thinks it might not be the best choice, a person has to demonstrate they understand, if I go to trial and plead not guilty, I might win, and that would be great. Case dismissed, I'm out. But I might lose. What happens if somebody loses at a trial?
They have to face the charges, they face the punishments.
Okay? At a trial, will those charges be reduced at all?
No.
They will not be reduced. At a trial, is it more likely that a person will be sentenced to the fullest extent of the law, or that the judge will go easy on them? Yes. Why is that? Why do you think it is?
They want to be just, and at least appear just.
Yes. Trials take time, trials cost money, and if you lose, there could be a potential penalty. So in order to be found competent, a person has to display to the doctor, I understand how this works. But you have the right that nobody can take away to do whatever you want to do, okay? But the evaluator just wants to make sure, I understand I might win, I might lose, and they also may ask, what's more likely? Are you more likely to win or more likely to lose? Not thinking of your opinion, but thinking of the opinion of a judge or a jury. And when it comes to that, somebody's got to recognize this.
Doesn't look good.
Exactly. And that's being competent. But you can be competent and say, you know what? I don't care. Nobody can take away your day in court. You don't have to. When you plead guilty, somebody's admitting to the charges, they are giving up rights that they have in this country. Nobody can make you give up those rights. But if you want to exercise your rights, the doctor just wants to make sure you understand the potential for a negative consequence in being sentenced for 2 Class A misdemeanors and a Class B, which, as you said, it's not prison time, but it is jail time. And it could be up to 1 year plus 1 year plus 6 months, up to 2.5 years. It's interesting, the court always seemingly wants us to know what the worst is that can happen. And it's not that the worst doesn't happen, but it usually doesn't. Okay? So, do you want me to read this part about testifying relevantly, where he also thought there was a deficit there?
Yes.
He says, while Mr. Hale was not disruptive or aggressive and was cooperative during the interview, his verbal communication includes references to delusional beliefs that are persecutory and bizarre. When Mr. Hale was asked if he were to testify, what might be the most important thing he would say, he stated, quote, I would want to share the 18 pages I wrote that outline how I'm being targeted and how the courts and police are corrupt, unquote. This statement suggests Mr. Hale's testimony would be colored by his delusional thinking. It is anticipated that Mr. Hale would likely express those delusions during testimony, thereby compromising his ability to testify relevantly. Mr. Hale would likely introduce these delusions in court, as he did throughout the evaluation on a frequent basis. So here's an interesting thing.
I only share them at the end of my actual testimony.
Okay.
I would testify relevantly, and I'll bring it up. So just know that I think this is relevant, and I want to bring up all 18 pages during court.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting in this moment too, because you haven't even mentioned that, which is good. As you said, it's a challenge in court because usually the person accused of a crime doesn't get to say anything until the very end. And in court, we only get to speak when the judge invites us to speak. And sometimes that's really hard because there's a lot of things being said about us, and we are not allowed to comment until the judge invites us to comment or asks us specific questions. And usually it's not till the very, 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 very end. So this is all the general information a person needs to know for competency. Something you need to be aware of, because up in this first paragraph, it mentions that unless a person is able to become competent while in jail or in the community, you may be admitted to a secure facility for inpatient competency restoration treatment, such as the Utah State Hospital. While people that are in the jail that need restoration usually go to the state hospital, people in the community usually do not go to the state hospital.
Okay.
That's only if there is an amazing problem. So I once counted, and this was a couple of years ago, I've worked total with over 500 people, and not everybody was in the community. Some were in jail. But of those 500, I've only worked with 3 people from the community that went to the hospital in the past 10 years. So that's seldom, and it's something that you probably don't need to concern yourself with, just so you know.
Sounds
okay?
good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, if you get into jail, stay out of jail, then it's possible that you'd go to the hospital, okay?
Okay.
But, so stay out of jail. Do you have any questions for me about any of this competency-related information we've talked about?
No.
Okay. Some mental status questions. Do you know what the date is today?
Okay, today's the 1st of July.
Perfect. How would you describe your mood today?
Enlightened, I guess. I didn't know he thought these things about me. Some of them I told him to go read on his own, so he couldn't share them with me yet. Like the 18 pages, he read them later.
Yeah. Any thoughts of hurting yourself or anybody else?
Nope.
Your memory pretty good, it seems like?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions for me at all?
Nope.
Okay. Because your charges include both, well, Class A misdemeanors. With B's and C's alone, competency restoration is limited to 60 days. With A's and B's, it's a longer time frame. Usually, approximately from the time we're meeting today, in about 3 months, there'll be another competency evaluation. It probably will not be, it might be with Dr. Harper, but probably not. So it'll be a whole new set of eyes. It's called a progress toward competency evaluation, and by statute, it's approximately 90 days. That evaluation in the future will then take precedent over this one. It's like this one is set aside, and the new one is the one that counts, okay? I am not sure off the top of my head when the court ordered your next review hearing. Do you happen to remember?
Maybe in August or the 21st.
Okay, that makes sense because it's about 90 days out. If the evaluation, that's not 90 days, is it?
Mm-mm.
No, it's not even close. Well, sort of. Yeah. I don't know what the delay has been, because Dr. Harper says he met with you on April 21st. So that would have been May, June, July. That would have been, yeah, more than 90 days. So I'm not sure why it took so long for you and I to get together. But I can tell you I wasn't assigned to meet with you until last week when I called.
Mm-hmm.
So if the evaluation isn't submitted to the court before your court date, they might just reschedule. Because that next court date is a competency review hearing. The judge will want to know, have you and I made contact? Are we meeting regularly, and are we making progress? And then they just usually schedule another review hearing, okay?
Okay.
We have the option, because we're in the community, you're on your own recognizance. Would you like to meet every week or every other week? And we can change that as time goes on too.
So my schedule is random, so we should probably do it every week as I get my schedule.
Okay. And you said you get your schedule on Tuesdays?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have your schedule now for next week then?
Yes.
Or is it sort of for the rest of this week?
It's until Tuesday next week.
Okay. Oh, okay. Based on your schedule, is next Tuesday good then, or what? How does that look? Where do you work?
Wendy's right here.
Oh, cool.
All right.
Mondays.
I have this next Tuesday free.
Okay. Is this a good time?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a dentist appointment at 10, so 1 should be fine. All right, competency.
And that's the 8th.
Competency.
Is it just a cleaning or a filling?
It's a cleaning.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, because sometimes after a filling, people don't feel good. Oh, cool. All right. Good job taking care of your teeth.
Thank you.
1 o'clock. Perfect. This copy of information is yours. Feel free to please read over it. If you have any, you can write on it, mark stuff up. If you have any questions, please make note of them so we can discuss them.
Okay.
This isn't different from the last time we met, really, so it's all the same information. Probably much of it will be very familiar. And so, as we've talked, the questions that Dr. Harper had were regarding these plea options and the reasons of choice, and this part about testifying relevantly if necessary, which is worded a little different here. In these 2 paragraphs, it focuses on understanding if you decide to plead not guilty, it sounds as though you would want to testify in your own defense because you're your primary witness.
Mm-hmm.
When a person does testify in their own defense, the defendant testifies. What is the prosecutor trying to do?
Dissuade against the testimony.
Okay. And as he asks you questions, what do you think his goal is?
To find holes, discrepancies, lies.
And is he going to use easy questions to do that, or is he going to use every trick in the book?
It's probably going to use every trick in the book.
Do you have to answer every question the prosecutor asks?
Nope.
Nope. However, if you don't answer a question, how does that look to a jury?
It might look suspicious.
Exactly. And so these are important things that you need to make sure at the next evaluation that the doctor knows you understand, okay? Because where you want to plead not guilty, that doctor just wants to make sure that you clearly understand the benefits versus the risks of not only testifying, but the potential benefits versus the risks of pleading not guilty. Okay?
Okay.
Competencies to make sure you understand how things work and that you're able to get the very best outcome for yourself.
Okay.
Okay? One of the questions that the doctors always want to know is, are you taking any medication now?
Yes.
Are you taking it regularly?
Yes.
And may I ask what that medication is?
I don't remember what it's called specifically.
Okay. What's the purpose of the medication?
Schizophrenia.
Okay. Is it fair to say it's an antipsychotic, whatever it might be? Or is that not quite right?
Let's see what it's called.
Does Dr. Harper have it somewhere here? Do
You
you think?
should. You should.
Okay.
Invega Sustenna.
Okay. An injectable?
Yes.
Okay. Is that through Wasatch Mental Health or a private provider?
No.
Okay. Okay. Really good things that should show how healthy you are is, it looks like you got a great place to live. You got a job. It sounds like that's going well. And so keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me at all?
No.
Okay. May I say, your memory is much better than my memory is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So just keep doing what you need to do to stay healthy.
Okay. Yeah. Exercise, eat well. let's keep on track with that.
And it sounds like for purposes of this, stay away from whoever this person is.
That's in another city. Yeah, it's easy.
Good. If you're good, then I will plan to meet with you next Tuesday. Right here?
Yes.
Cool. This is a good location. Anything else, sir?
Nope.
You're good for now? If anything happens, if you're not feeling well, if something comes up with work, just give me a call or text me, and we can make any change that's needed.
Okay. Usually work schedules around me, my needs.
Nice. That's really good. They must think well of you.
Oh, they do it around all the employees' needs.
Oh yeah? That's good. As you know, I travel